Let's talk about sex. This is by far the most important, the most, out of all the things, this is my wife's favorite subject.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, real sexual intimacy and fulfillment in the marriage. And this is very important. In marriage, sex is the only experience that we have that we don't share with anyone else.
We shouldn't share
And we
it with
shouldn't
anyone.
anybody else. So soon after getting married, many couples realize that their sexual desires are not quite in sync. And I wonder what you guys think about that. Why is it that it's not quite in sync? And just think about that. If you have, you can put something in the comments. But majority of the men actually find themselves that they're more sexual than their spouse, than their wives, and many women are they discover that they're more emotional than their husbands. But in spite of the differences, I think it's important to understand that you can discover a greater level of freedom and satisfaction when sex is an open subject between you, your spouse,
And God.
And you can really experience sexual intimacy and fulfillment in marriage. Amen. So let's go ahead and continue, because I know this is a subject that is
Taboo.
It's taboo. It's hard. Sometimes it's difficult to conversate and because of those fears.
You know, I think that because sex is not talked about, it's such a taboo subject. Marriages actually look in other places to get information or to discover what parameters are in marriage, because it's not talked about in the church, and we believe that that's something that should be talked about. Sex is a gift given to us by God, and so who better to seek reference from than from the Creator Himself?
Yeah, and it's so important to understand God's perfect plan for marriage with sex, because He did create it. Okay, He created it for us. Okay, God created sex and said it's very good. So I want to talk to you about some real inhibitions and misconceptions about God. Okay, one is that God created it, and He said it was very good. Okay, so what do you think God's plan for sex in marriage is? If you can put in in the comments there, just share with us what you think God's plan for marriage is. And we're going to actually cover a little bit, but I just want to see where you're at as we talk. Now, God puts parameters on sex by prohibiting certain things, okay? Adultery, fornication, incest, pedophilia, bestiality, yes, that's against. Rape, pornography, and fantasy lust.
Fantasy lust can be for women. For women, it could be novels. It could be books that you begin to fantasize about things.
Yeah, and it also could be just man imagining other things instead of their wife. Each person has to decide whether God's parameters are a fence to keep you safe or a fence to keep you from having fun. And it sounds a little crazy, but you're either going to see it as there's a purpose for it. God has, parameters are good. Boundaries are good. It protects you. Sometimes if we have this mentality that boundaries,
we're not free.
We're missing out. Everybody else, the world does this. They're doing this. And so a lot of times I see this in some cultures. I see this sometimes where married people feel like they're missing out on certain things. That's when you start seeing crazy things such as adding things to the marriage to spice things up because of what they heard. And somebody says, this works for my marriage, you should try this. And so you have to be careful. We're going to talk about these things a little bit more, but boundaries are good. Boundaries are good.
Dennis, there was I don't know how, it was a long time ago, but I remember when a female friend that told me, this was a while ago, that her spouse went away to, I don't know, he was stationed somewhere else. So to keep the intimacy alive in their marriage, what she did was she would send the person perfumed items or different pictures or things like that. And it was, for her, it was to keep the marriage, the intimacy in the marriage, but he's away from his wife, and that I don't, as wisdom, you need to be careful that we don't start imitating things that can cause, I don't know how you would say that would cause someone to be aroused away from you. You know, so there's a way, there's a form of intimacy. Intimacy is not just sexual. Intimacy has to do with the communication and the intimacy in our relationship, the boundaries that we keep in our relationship. And I think all of that sums up to create an amazing sexual experience with your husband or your wife.
Yeah, and at the end, this is matters of the heart. You know, that's why we emphasize all the things that we talk about is things that deal with the heart. And like example, fantasy lust is something that can happen in those situations. You know, you're provoking your husband when he's away to think of you, and when that doesn't work, what happens?
Exactly.
You know, there's limitations to that because intimacy was meant to be close.
Yes, together, you and your spouse.
Okay, so have you ever felt that the Christian life limits your fun in sex? And that's a question that you should think about, because a lot of times there are people that feel this way. There's people that feel, you know, wow, Christianity is we're missing out, we're not having fun.
I think culture has a lot to do with that. I think the movies that we see, or even the books that we read, and once again, the conversations that people have with you, it's, you know, I remember when we were, I don't know, when I was younger, before I was married, the movies would always show the romance between a guy and a girl, and how, you know, it would always show sex before marriage. Like if it was this super romantic thing, and you know, is irresistible to one another, and then they would show, you know, the intimate parts, and it would make it so romantic and amazing. And that's not it at all. That's not how when we get married, you'll discover that that's not it at all. The intimacy is found in how you trust your husband or your wife, how secure you feel with your husband and your wife, how safe you feel with your emotions, with knowing that person loves you no matter what. There's more to it than just the sexual act, you know. And I think the people thinking that Christian life, being a Christian, limits you from having fun is because of all the things that we've allowed to program our minds because of culture right. Today, you know. So the answer is there's no. As a Christian, I think it's an even better sex life.
Even better.
Yeah, because God teaches you, the world teaches you to love from the outside in, but the Word of God teaches you to love someone through and through from the inside out, you know. And I mean, of course you're going to be attracted to the person. That's human nature. But the Word instructs us how to treat your spouse, how to love the person, even in the good and in the bad, you know. So I think as a Christian, I know that your experience is more fun, is more enjoyable as a Christian.
Oh, definitely. And now, something that I want you guys to kind of, I don't know, we're not going to cover this to the full extent, but it's just to get you going, get you, let's put it this way, deal with the heart issue, okay? Because I think sometimes when we talk about what is sexually permissible, you know, it's like, well, can we do this in the marriage? Is this okay? Well, I want to give you some tips on how to determine whether this is right or wrong, okay? If the Bible doesn't prohibit an intimate act, okay, we're not going to go into the specific intimate acts. Maybe in another podcast we can do that, but not today, okay? But it's up to you. It's up to your personal choice and conscience if it's not mentioned in the Bible. If the Bible says do not do this, okay, which the Bible has examples of what things you should not do. But there's some things that are not mentioned, and some people take it out of context and start throwing things in there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opinion that is put into this because we once again, I think it goes back to culture has, because there's the other extreme that everything is wrong, you know, every single thing is wrong, and that's you shouldn't do that in a marriage. But I think it's important that you and your spouse feel that it's agree.
We both have to agree.
You both have to
agree. And so that was my next point. We both have to agree. There's things that you may want to try, okay? But if the spouse is not ready, don't force it. Okay. Or
if the spouse does not want to, then that should be respected.
It needs to be respected, because at the end of it all, your heart has to be proper. It has to be pure. There has to be a pureness in heart. And I know sometimes, and I'm gonna give you an example. Something that we may do, we may be doing it with pure heart. It may be good for us, but for someone else, it may not be.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes
there's traumas. There's things that
there's traumas. There's things that we may have been affected by the pornography that we've seen, and so we want to come in and try something.
Exactly.
But it's not because it may not be coming from a right place. It may be coming from, you want to relive something that you saw, and so that's when the issues become like, there may be nothing biblical. It may not be mentioned in the Bible as something sinful, but you know in your heart it is, because you're thinking of something else that doesn't honor your spouse. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. And the other thing is, does it really enhance your relationship? Does it really make it better? Does it bring you in closer together? And so those are things you got to kind of look at and analyze before you go into that. Now, do you and your spouse talk about sex? I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that
marriage can have.
Yeah, not talking about it, you know, because I'm gonna tell you, I've heard comments of in conversations with marriages, you know, 10, 20 years married, that they're at the point of divorce, and when it comes to this topic, they'll say something like, you know, I can't stand when you do this in our in our intimacy moments. They're just fed up. I don't like it. And the husband is like, you never told me that. You never told me you didn't like that. You know, like, I you know you didn't like me nibbling on your ear. Okay, then get off my ear. You know, whatever. Or the neck thing. You know, you may not like that or whatever. I'm giving a little more details. Try to keep it PG 13. But you know, those are things you got to talk about. What do you like? What do you not like?
And if you can't talk about those things with your spouse, then there's
why is it difficult?
There's an issue with intimacy, because once again, communication is that doorway to an intimate marriage.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so let's talk about the real temptations, okay, and some deceptions about sexuality.
Dennis, really quickly, I'm so sorry. Why is sex a difficult subject to talk about or discuss? For us, with our children, we have a 16-year-old. My son turned 16, and my daughter is 17.
Going on 18.
She's going on 18. Okay, but I think one of the things that I think will help to contribute to a healthy sex life for our children is that they're able to see every day our affection to one another. It's not a taboo for them to see mommy and papi kissing or hugging or you know, just things like that. There's people that are raised in homes that they never saw that type of interaction with their parents. So even mentioning or talking about these things is taboo. So they don't really have anyone to talk to about these things, you know. And I also think that it's, once again, it's a taboo to talk about within the house of the Lord, within the church. And I think we have to be able to open this type of communication with our children, with your congregation, with your, you know, and there's a line, you know. It's not about sharing experiences. It's about having that open communication, so that it's not such a taboo that you go to the wrong source to find out what is healthy and what is not healthy, because everything that we need is in the Word of God. Everything that we possibly need to discover about sexual intimacy is in the Word of God.
That's very good. Okay, so real temptations and deceptions about sexuality, and this is one of the sex lies men believe. The temptation. Okay, let's talk about the temptation. Men are visually stimulated, and male pornography provides an outlet for him. This is the lies that are believed. Matter of fact, there's a culture of even fathers teaching their men, their boys, that it's a manly thing to look at pornography to prepare them for the.
They actually there's actually fathers that have done that because they want to make sure that their sons are attracted to the opposite sex, and that's just very you're doing so much damage to your children, to your sons. Really quickly, it says sex lies that men believe, that men are visually stimulated. That's not the part that's the lie. I think men are visually stimulated, and that's why you have to be more responsible with what you see. With men, with what you see, women are more stimulated emotionally, but men tend to be, if you have a son, you will I don't want to put my son out there, but
You did just now.
as you grow up, as you see your sons grow up, you will like, it's totally different than raising your daughters, and you understand that we have to protect their, as much as we can, because we can't protect them from everything, but protect them. Like we didn't allow Caleb to see certain things for a long time. We had locks on everything and parental guidelines and things like that. But there came a time where what we wanted to protect him from was he was exposed to things in this world. So what do you do with that? You see that the struggles that our son had is different than what our daughter had, and so we had to be able to work with him in that area. And you took more leadership in that. Work with him in that area and teach him, okay, you got to protect what you see. You got to it's natural that this may be attractive, but you have to protect yourself. And you brought him to, I think it was Psalms 101. And so if there's parents out there with
Psalms
sons,
101.
Read Psalms 101 with your son, and I think it was an amazing bonding time between you and our son.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a lie. Male pornography under emotionalizes and hypersexualizes women. Okay, so the male pornography under emotionalizes. Okay, men think, I wish my wife was sexual like that. Okay, so that's what it's saying. The lie is that that the women need to be more sexual. That I wish when a man looks at pornography, when I say pornography is everything. Is actual going to a website, magazines, movies that we normally see, TV shows, even sometimes even commercials, whatever it is that brings you into
the Spanish channels.
A lot of the Spanish channels.
Of the Spanish channels.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand that that's the lie, that it hypersexualizes women, where the men expect the women that, like, women are like this, but they're not. Women are more emotional. So what happens is that the male becomes less emotional. It's all about sex, okay, and the women, it's all about emotion. So there has to be a balance. The woman helps in that area, and the men should help in that area. Now the truth is, she becomes sexual through her emotions. Okay, a woman becomes sexual through her emotions. So if you want your wife to be ready for intimacy, you have to wash her, like the Word of God says, wash her with the Word. Wash her with the Word. Prepare her, tell her you love her in the morning. Tell, send a little message, I'm thinking of you, and she's at work, or she's at home, or wherever she's at. So that when
caring for her.
Yeah.
caring for her, taking care of her, knowing that those things matter to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that's what I was trying to say, is that a lot of people think, or a lot of husbands think that, oh, it's just about the act, you know.
Yeah.
But when you have marriages that you don't care, you're not caring for your wife,
And a woman needs his care.
you're not tending to her, or something was bothering her, it doesn't even faze you. She had a hard day at work, how can I help you, you know? I don't know, those type of things.
Look, with women, and this is not a hidden secret. Okay, it shouldn't be. A woman, if you take care of her heart, you got the rest.
You have the rest.
You have the rest.
If you don't do that,
If you don't,
then this is gonna sound. If you don't do that part of taking care of her heart, then intimacy becomes just an act. And then she may feel used, or she may feel,
and you'll never experience sexual fulfillment.
these are generalizations, because not, you know, she may feel this way, that she may feel used, or she may feel it's just something to please the husband, you know. But the best form of sexual intimacy is when both husband and wife are invested.
Yeah.
They're invested in that form of intimacy.
Yeah, when you take care of the heart, when you take care of your wife's heart, you will have the rest. Okay, and I say that in a very positive way, but I'm giving you as a warning too. Okay, once her heart is completely fulfilled, you have to be ready for the rest that's coming. Okay, all right, that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, all right, here goes some sex lies. Okay, about for women. Okay. But first, let's go with the temptation. Okay, women are emotionally stimulated, and female pornography provides an outlet for her.
Chick flicks, soap operas,
romantic TV shows. We're not gonna mention which one. Okay.
Why didn't he do that? Why doesn't my husband do that for me?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like 2 places at once.
It's not reality.
Well, unless you're like in the border and you have one foot on the other, like Walk to Remember. Yep. Oh my gosh, how can you compete with that? You know, so there's so many things, and then so those are the temptations that women will go through. Okay, now for a husband, how can you make changes to meet your wife's emotional needs? You know, and I think for me, since that's a question for us men, I think one of the things that help out is being intentional about it, you know, making time for it, which can be a struggle, because a lot of times we don't make time for it, but we have to push ourselves to make time for it. If you really want to focus on God's plan for sexual fulfillment, this has to happen. There's no sexual fulfillment if it's just you meeting your own personal needs, because that's not what it is. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but men have to make it intentional to meet those needs.
You have to make it a priority.
So it's about being a servant. And we've talked about this in the previous one. It's about how can we serve one another. And something that has helped me is I've made a commitment.
Yeah, you got to explain being a servant if there's someone that hasn't heard the other ones, because it's kind of like it may not be understood.
Yeah, it's not about feeding you grapes.
Although it would be nice, but no.
Or a massage. I know you like massages. Okay, but anyways, but what I mean by servant is something that I made a decision from the very beginning of the marriage is in our intimacy, I'm always going to fulfill her needs first. I want to do that, because the moment that in a marriage intimacy becomes about what am I going to get out of it, then pride comes in, selfishness comes in, and then you stop thinking about the needs of your spouse, and not just in the intimacy of sex, but in the intimacy of the heart, where, you know, right now
intimacy.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
That's a whole okay.
That's good. Okay, so that's what I mean by servant, but that's the decision that I made. I made. Now, as a marriage, you may work something different out. And I think we talk about this, have talked about this before. Is, you know, it could be as simple as, hey, tonight is your night. Whatever you want, it's your turn. Or tomorrow it'll be my turn. You know, whatever it may be, whatever works for you. I know for me, what works for me is
we serve each other.
We serve each other. We really do. And my wife doesn't struggle with this. So as a man, I struggled before with lust. So I make sure, okay, how do I combat that? Lust is about being selfish. Lust is about what can feed myself. And so that's why I always take care of her needs first, to keep that in control. Okay, because men need that. You know, I think when we're honest about ourselves, when we're transparent, when we realize that, okay, just because I'm a godly man does not mean that my flesh will never get in the way. Yes, the flesh gets in the way, and so it's important to set boundaries where you're helping yourself by eliminating those possibilities as much as possible. Okay, so the lie. Female pornography under-sexualizes and hyper-emotionalizes men. So in other words, when women think, I wish my husband talked to me like that.
Romance.
You know, why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that? And write me a poem, you know. You know, some guys like, hey, yo, baby, let's do it. Let's go. Or if maybe if you change your accent. Right, lad?
Oh, gosh, Dennis, no, please.
No? Or maybe a British accent. I can't even do it. I've been watching this show, and it's like it's all what?
No,
Irish?
Babe, no, please, no.
So that's a lie that we cannot fall into, okay? Now, here's the truth. Let's get real.
Let's get real.
Let's get real. Okay. He becomes emotional through sex. Okay. It is very interesting. We're opposites, you know. Women get sexualized when you take care, when they're emotional, when you take care of their heart. Okay. Men get emotional through sex, you know. So I know this. Hopefully you don't get offended by this, but I'm being general. Okay, not about us. Okay. But if you want your man to talk to him right after sex. His heart opens up. He's more willing to talk. You know, you can have these moments and have your man cry for the first time, maybe. You never know. But there's something that, you know, when you're doing things right, when you are being fulfilled sexually according to the God's plan, it's going to naturally make the man more emotional, and it's going to have him open up more. Okay, so that's something that you can kind of bring into the marriage. You know, have these conversations. You know, don't allow them to fall asleep. You know, the moment it's done, you're like, okay, no, talk. Let's talk, baby. You know, and so it's very important that those things that when you meet his sexual needs, and then talk to him about his emotions, he will express himself. Okay, so that's very important. Now let's get into the word, because we haven't gotten any word in here. So let's go to Hebrews 13:4.
From the Passion.
Honor the sanctity of marriage and keep your vows of purity to one another, for God will judge sexual immorality in any form, whether single or married.
So what do you think about that?
Well, the first thing that the word that pops out is honor. Honor the sanctity of marriage. I think that's so important, to honor one another. And the fact that it's asking us to keep our vows of purity to one another, and it says whether single or married. That's awesome, because you continue the purity of your marriage when you're married, because there's a part before it to keeping your purity as an individual, but then you also there's things to keep your marriage pure when you're as you're married.
That's good.
And I think this is an important between a husband and a wife. It's really important that you have those conversations. What
what are things that are affecting our marriage, our intimacy, but those conversations don't always happen. It usually happens when it's something exploded, or there was a problem, or and so it's important to have these conversations, healthy conversations throughout your marriage.
That's good. So let's look at some real expectations about sex in marriage. Okay. And this is very important to understand, because I know this may sound like cookie cutter. There's no cookie cutter for sex in marriage. Okay. Every couple is unique and has their own sexual style, sexual needs. Okay. So it's very important to get to know each other and have those conversations, because you'll discover, certain things. And like I said earlier, although it may be biblically okay to do, it may not meet the needs of your spouse, and that's very important to understand, because we're all made differently. Okay, if your expectations are wrong concerning sex, then you're gonna set up to have a sexual dysfunction. And we can go into more specific details about that in another podcast. But there's a lot of sexual dysfunction right now, especially and I was reading a report on a research on this, about how young men are struggling with sexual dysfunction because of the lies that they've been told about pornography being healthy for you, and preparing you for marriage and things like that, and even bringing it into the marriage. Well, now they can't fulfill because of the sexual dysfunction that they have, and it's gotten serious. It's gotten like extreme. So it's very important that you have those conversations. If you have young ones that are going through puberty and things like that, it's good to talk to them about that. Talk to them with truth, educate them, but let them know these are the consequences. It's not about everything is the devil, but it's about, this is the reason why it's wrong, because it affects your marriage, future marriage. It affects your ability to be fulfilled as God planned it.
Dennis, can we go back to really quickly, honor the sanctity of marriage? One of the things that honor the sanctity of our marriage is that there's certain conversations that are to be kept between a husband and a wife. We have to be careful with that, because sometimes we open doors, and it goes with, if you read the whole verse, keep your vows of purity to one another, for God will judge sexual immorality in any form, whether single or married. When we start entertaining conversations of intimacy with others, maybe we think we're just, I just need someone to hear me, or I just want, he's my best friend, or as a wife, he's my best friend, or you as a husband, she's my close friend. Or maybe it could be someone you don't even know, but you're entertaining conversations, even with words, because especially for a female, just there's something that is emotionally connecting with words. So when we start opening doors to entertaining those conversations with others instead of our spouse, that can become an addiction. It's an addiction that is meeting an emotional need, and that need is only supposed to be met with your spouse. So you're opening a door to sexual immorality. You're instead of it being a place where it's just you and your spouse, now there's someone else in that circle, and it destroys marriages. It does. The trust level is shaken, or it could be destroyed as well. You don't feel safe with your spouse. You don't trust your spouse. There's so many things that happen because we didn't honor the sanctity of marriage. My advice here is that if you are one of those that are having conversations about your intimacy with other people, just know that you're opening a door that's very dangerous. It's very dangerous, that that's an open door for the enemy to have a field day with your marriage.
That's very good. So I want to mention real quick the reasonable expectations for sex, okay? Because I know sometimes, if you're newlywed or you're a single man, single woman, knowing that your heart's desire is to get married one day. Okay, you want to have right expectations. Just like many of us, we expected one thing and realized this is not real life. Okay, so the first thing is I want to tell you what an average couple has. Okay, they have sex 6 times a month. That's 1.5 times a week. That's 3 times every 2 weeks, whatever that means. Don't imagine the half, people. Okay. Now, of those encounters, one's going to be great. 3 times will be good, and 1 will be fair, and 1 will be bad.
These are generalizations.
These are generalized. I don't know how they came up with these numbers, but those are the average that they. And it's just to give you an idea that that this is real life. This is
not the movies.
It's not the movies. It's not.
This is real. This is.
Yeah, this is as real as
real
it gets.
Life. Real life.
Real life. Mm-hmm. You and your spouse will rarely have the same desire at the same time. So to have great sex in marriage, you need to have a servant spirit. And this goes again. I mean, if there's anything that truly matters in a marriage is to have a servant spirit, 2 servant spirits, okay, both serving one another, both focus on serving the needs of each other, okay.
Another red flag, and these are things that we have heard in marriages. There's times where the husband and the wife are upset at each other, and so what the wife does is she takes the way that she punishes her husband is no sex for you or no intimacy.
Make your own sandwich.
And so this is the problem that comes in marriages. That is a responsibility that we have with one another. And if we're not fulfilling that need, what are you doing to your spouse? What are you doing? Are you setting him up for failure in that area? For wives, if your husband comes home with a stressful day or an issue and you're not allowing him to talk to you, there's going to be someone waiting to talk to your spouse. So there's responsibilities that we have with one another. It's not just about my needs. It's not just about your needs. It's how can we help one another? And that's a no-no. You don't punish your spouse. Now it's different if there's a reason why a wife or a husband they don't want to have intimacy. Then the conversation, once again, what's going on, what's happening, but that's a no. You don't punish your spouse with no intimacy.
Yeah, that's very important. And another thing that you can do is you want to plan special sexual encounters on a regular basis when you have the most energy and time. I think one of the things that can hurt a marriage, and you find yourself not being 6 times, but maybe 2 times because you didn't plan it ahead, or maybe you thought, okay, today I want to plan something with my wife, but you don't communicate with her, and then I have a meeting, or I have this, or I have to take the kids over here and over there. So I think it's very important that you make plans. At least once a week, plan something. For us, we do a lot of times. For us, it's Mondays. That's our sabbatical.
Wait, we have our
dates.
Have our dates.
Our
on
dates,
Monday.
yeah. Okay, our dates.
We make time for one another on Mondays.
But we make plans. We say, hey, baby, tonight's the night.
Okay.
Get ready. You got to give the hints, right? Okay.
It's important to make time. It's you're telling your spouse that you're a priority.
Yeah, you're a priority.
You're a priority to me.
So it's okay to schedule sex, so that you know what to expect.
That sounds weird.
It does sound weird, but you know what? God is a God of scheduling.
Of order.
God schedules. Mm-hmm. We see that in the Bible. We see God how God prepared moments.
He also has moments of spontaneity.
Exactly. That too. So he's a little bit of both. He's all but it's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. Have his or her night. Whatever it may be, but it's important to do so, because if not, time. And the thing is that when time passes by, you'll start noticing it in your marriage, the closeness or the lack of closeness in the marriage.
And I think if you're really honest with yourself, both of you as in a marriage, you should ask yourself, do we make time not just for the intimate moments, but also, do I romance my spouse? Do I comfort them with my words? Do I serve them? Do I prepare that meal that he desires? You want to make sure that you're serving one another. You plan those things in advance. We say something that I live. I know we live for the Lord, of course, but I live my life to make you happy, and you live your life to make me happy. Whenever that becomes about making myself happy, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's something
and
that
people
we've
jump
lived
into
by.
marriage. People jump into marriage thinking that way. I can't wait to get out of this my house so I can meet so and so, and she will make me happy, and she will give me all my
Or he's supposed to do this and this and this and that, but that's not what marriage is. The most selfless act.
It is.
That you can. It's a personification. Marriage symbolizes what Christ did for the church.
And not only that, it's the greatest tool that we have to make men, to make real men. I know that it may sound right, but if I don't want you to start thinking of people, okay? But if you know someone in their 40s, 50s, never been married, okay, a man, he can be very childish. As much as he grows up and as much as, there's something that we learn in marriage, because being a man is being unselfish. Being a man is taking care of others, putting others before yourself.
Your family.
Your family. Women, it's the same thing. There's a way that we don't think about, the woman doesn't think about herself. She thinks of others first, of her kids or things like that. When Jesus came, he came to serve first.
Yes.
He was all about serving. The greatest servant of all time. We can be number 2, number 3, number billion, number 4 billion, but never number 1, because Jesus did everything. He served. He gave his whole complete self to the world, to us, to save us. And in marriage, we give ourselves completely
to each other.
And so, as much as there's a limitation of how much we can grow, not being in an experienced marriage. But when you enter into marriage, it's a great opportunity to become the man, become the woman that God wants you to be when you walk in His perfect plan.
Unfortunately, there are men they're married, but they haven't grown up. There's some because, and it's not because. It's because of that servant spirit.
It's a lack of servant spirit.
It's about this doesn't make me happy.
They haven't fulfilled God's perfect
plan for the marriage. Yes.
And if you're in that situation,
it's not too late.
It's not too late. Pray about it. Ask God to help you. Give you strategies on how to get into His plan.
I would say, of course, ask God to help you, but sit down with your spouse. Sit down with your husband or your wife. If you're a husband, sit down with your wife and ask her, do you feel that that I meet your needs? Do you feel that your not just intimate needs, but your emotional needs? Do you feel that I am supportive of you? And I pray that your spouse can be 100% honest and can give you that feedback. If your spouse cares about the marriage, then they'll be honest with you, And we have those conversations all the time. Whenever we travel by ourselves, or we're in the car by ourselves, because these are not conversations you have with your children in the car,
Right.
These are conversations between us, and I'm so proud that we always do that with Dennis. Do you feel this about us, or you'll ask me, how are you feeling about you? We always try to make sure that we are serving one another, that we are bettering one another, that we are meeting each other's needs. And that's also the opportunity for us to communicate what areas we need to work on, yes.
Yeah. So making this a priority is key. making this a priority. And then so those are things that you got to think about, you know, like as a husband, what can you do to prioritize the need of the wife, of your wife, and the same thing for your wife. What how can you make it a greater priority to meet the sexual needs of your husband? Okay, those are the things that and are you willing to try what your wife is suggesting? Are you willing to try what your husband is suggesting? Because it's very important. And this brings us into 1 Corinthians 7, verse 4 and 5. If you can read that,
I sure can. Okay, the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Very good. That actually...
So
sums
don't take
up.
this out of context, people. That means it has to be a mutual agreement.
Yeah.
Mutual agreement. This is not for the husband to demand something and force their wife. Okay. That's why we mentioned earlier that there's boundaries, and one is, rape. Okay. And we've seen cases of in marriage, there have been rape. We're not saying, okay, you have no choice, baby. The word says you got to give it to me. No, it's not about that. It's about mutually coming to agreement. And then if you're a godly man, you can't use the excuse, oh no, I'm fasting and praying. Use that as an excuse because you're tired, sleepy, or because it has to be because you're one. You're called to become one. You can't use that and say, okay, no. You have to come in agreements. When both are fasting and praying, seeking for the Lord, it's something that you're doing for God.
Because now you're consecrating yourself for the Lord.
For the Lord.
That is something that you're prioritizing God at that moment, and that's to be respected.
Yeah,
that's to be respected.
Yeah. So we've talked about sex, okay, and we're gonna continue on next week with another topic. But I want to go ahead and wrap it up, unless you have some questions or anything like that. But it's very important, and I'll go ahead and wrap this up. And I'm excited for what we're going to continue to do. And at the end of all, this podcast, Matters of the Heart. One of the reasons why we wanted to even do this is just so you guys can get to know our hearts, but also kind of all of us to kind of deal with our hearts, deal with our issues, because right now. The enemy is attacking marriages, is attacking families, and we want healthy families. We want healthy marriages. And if you are from the Sinai family, we want you to be a healthy Sinai family. We want you to help us grow also. And if our marriages are flourishing, then I know our families are going to be flourishing. We know the church community will be flourishing. The church family will be flourishing. So I want to go ahead and continue on with this series, and we'll probably do other different types of series. But go ahead and share this podcast, and maybe hit, if you like what we're talking and you've been blessed by it, click the like button, because that'll help us. Okay, but let's go ahead and wrap it up. The key to better sex is often reducing the stress in your spouse's life.
Amen. It's so true,
right? And I would even say that about the husband. The husband, when the stress is relieved, he'll be more emotionally connected. Okay. Soon after getting married, many couples find out their sexual desires are not quite in sync, and so it's so important that we talk about it. We have these conversations. Okay, it's so important. Do not forget to talk about it. This idea of I didn't know, you didn't tell me, after 10 years should not happen. But if it has happened, talk about it, honey. I want to talk to you about this. I want to fulfill your needs. What is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? Okay, and the same thing for the husband. Ask that question. So it's very important that you guys get in sync. Okay, approaching sex with a servant spirit means you choose to meet your spouse's sexual and emotional needs, regardless of whether they line up with your own. Okay, that's very important. That's what it is to be a servant. Your spouse's needs are important. Very important. So listen to your spouse and validate what they're telling you. Work hard.
Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be...
Yeah, everyone wants to be heard. Work hard to meet their needs, even if you don't have the same need or understand it completely. Okay? Try your best to meet those needs. You know, sometimes you may not understand it, okay? But make sure that at the end of it all, you guys can come into an agreement. Okay? We're not talking about, hey, this is what I like. Okay, you have to do it. No, there has to be, both have to be feel comfortable doing it, okay? God is concerned about the overall health of the relationship. And he designed sexual intimacy to reach its full potential only when genuine care and sensitivity are present. And that is God's perfect plan for marriage in the sex life. He wants you to be fully fulfilled. And sex is a vehicle, it's a gift God gave us to be able to bring us closer together. It's not the only gift, okay? It's not the only gift, but it's one of the greatest gifts. That's why it's so important to have such a healthy sexual life. So when hard times comes, in other words, when situations come, you guys have that closeness, okay? And I would even say, so when life gets more difficult at an older age, okay? Because the reality is sexual life will not happen forever. Okay, if God allows us to live long enough, okay? So we need this intimacy to be built and to grow so that way when we reach, 80, 90 years old, that we're able to, those years of building that intimacy can help us through those times.
There's a lot of ingredients that are needed for sexual intimacy to happen. And some examples are trust and loyalty, care, all there's ingredients that are needed so that you can have that sexual intimacy that you want in a marriage. I just want to say that there are marriages out there that even within the church, Dennis, that are experiencing issues in intimacy and in other areas of their marriage. But if you notice, usually if you're having problems in other areas of your marriage, it's going to affect your intimacy. And there's so many marriages, more than I would expect, that are having these issues, and it's almost become like normal to them. It's almost like survival automatic mode, in their marriage.
Missing out.
What happens is that maybe their kids are growing up, and their first priority is, I'm a mother, I'm a father, so that that's not that's not necessary for me right now. So what happens, the kids grow up, the kids leave the home, and you are left with just confronting your spouse. So what happens, all those years of not fixing those areas in your marriage or confronting those issues that affected your intimacy in relationship, that's what you're faced with at that time. And so there's a lot of marriages that either divorce or it just dwindles out. It's just, this is my friend, but this is a generalization, because there's other things, there's other factors that come to play in some marriages. Maybe there's a psychological issue or a trauma that was experienced, and that still is a reason why you should seek help, because your spouse, there are needs that need to be met. And so if that's not important to you to meet the needs of your spouse, then what are you expressing to your husband or your wife, And so I'm just surprised, and we pray for marriages in our community, in our church, but there's so many marriages that are experiencing problems, and you see them, and they have smiles on their faces, but it's so sad, because marriage is beautiful, marriage is wonderful, marriage is a gift from God to let you know that, not only do you have me, the Lord is not only telling us that you have me, but I'm going to put someone in your life that I want him to reflect or her to reflect me, so that you can have a physical person, even if it's for a temper, because we don't live forever, but that you can physically feel my love, And I think it's so important that if you're a marriage, if you're someone that is, every marriage has problems, every marriage has disagreements, but what happens, how do you take care of those disagreements? Do you let that simmer? Do you let that plant a seed of division in your heart to your spouse, or resentment, or now has your emotions have become numb to your spouse? Those are things that, if you're one of those, I encourage you, pray to God and ask God, what do I need to do? Because we always usually think it's the other person. Well, he doesn't change. So if he doesn't change, I'm not budging. It's not even about the other person. It's about you. Usually the solution to a problem is not the other person. It's you. And ask God, take the time to ask God, what is it that I can do? And what conversation, what words can I speak to my husband or to my wife? Because I want our marriage to be fulfilled, a place of fulfillment, a safe place, a place where I can experience your love, God, and marriage is beautiful. Marriage is wonderful. Marriage, we got married at 25. And I know that God knows all things. That was the timing of God. But in my heart of hearts, even though I know for a fact that was the timing of the Lord, but I love you so much that I wish I would have more years with you, But marriage to me has been a journey of healing. I've been able to experience God in a different way. I've been able to see God as a father, as a lover, as a provider, and it's not saying that you're not God, but I've seen the attribute. I've understood the attributes of God through our marriage, through seeing you experience life, and all of those things come into play.
Wow.
And it's so important that we heal in a marriage, that we heal this, because no matter what, it will affect your relationship with God. It affects, because there's a disconnect, So I encourage, I don't know if for me, one more thing is like, I wasn't raised with my biological father. We were talking about this yesterday. I have my mother married, I have a stepdad, Edwin, and Edwin was, he played the father role. Another father figure in my life has been Pastor, your dad. He fulfilled a father role in my life. My father, for whatever reason, he wasn't able to be in my life as much as I wish, as I wish he could be. And so I didn't have those experiences as a as a daughter with her father. I missed out a lot of those years. But in getting married, seeing my husband, seeing you have those moments with Ruthie and with Caleb, I was able to have a healthy perspective of a father to his children, and that healed an area in my heart that I didn't expect. You don't think that those things matter, but in seeing that relationship, especially with Ruthie, I was able to have closure for that area, and I feel like I understand a father's love because I was able to have experienced that through you. So why I'm saying all this is because it's so important. Marriage, the institution of marriage is so important, and it affects how you see God. It affects how you experience God, And so if this is you, I encourage you, have those conversations with your spouse. Find a spiritual leader, find a mentor, find someone that you can talk to. There should be no shame. You are not alone. You're not the only person that has these experience these things in their marriage. So I encourage you, find someone, make your marriage a priority, make your marriage the most important thing in your life. And I know there's parents that don't, I'm talking a lot, I'm so sorry, Dennis, but I know that there's marriages that say my children come first, and that is not the way that God, that's not correct. There's an order in our life. It's God, your spouse, your children. It should always, God, that there's an order of things. Mm-hmm. And trust me that when you put your spouse before your children, your family, your children will receive the blessing, because one day they're going to be that spouse, and you want them to be the priority of who they marry. So that's it. I know
that's
I'm talking. That's all. I love being married. We were talking one day, and we were like, because I don't, you feel unqualified for so many things. I don't know the Bible left and right. I can't quote scriptures. Like your dad is amazing. Your dad, he just quotes scriptures out of nowhere, So then sometimes you feel a little bit unqualified. And I know that God calls, God equips, he equips the called. So that's something that I know that God is working in me. But if I'm sure about anything, I'm sure about what God has done in our marriage. I'm proud of our marriage. I'm proud of the man of God that you are, and I'm proud of the things that God has changed in me. And I know I'm a great wife, so you don't have to worry about that. But I know that God still changes me, and that's what I want. I want every day for God to teach me, how can I become a better wife? How can I become a better mother? How can I become a better friend, a better daughter? And so marriage is wonderful. I love marriage.
I love you.
I love you.
We live in a society that has kind of trying to push us away from taking personal responsibility. Mm-hmm.
Ownership.
And take ownership of your own responsibilities. And we need to come back to that. If you're struggling with that, you got to make sure that it's not that the spirit of the world that's affecting your marriage. So men, don't forget to meet the emotional needs of your spouse. And women, don't forget to meet the needs of the physical needs of your husband. Okay.
We're actually living in a culture right now as we speak, where the culture is teaching us it's victimization. The culture today is teaching us it's their fault, what they need to change, they need to do. Yeah, when you just said that, it reminded me of that. And the Word of God instructs, it teaches us, it's be accountable to you. Mm-hmm. What is it that I can change? What can I do to change my circumstance? And I love that. I love that. We need to take ownership of, okay, our marriage is in the rocks. Stop blaming your spouse, and start taking ownership for the things that I can change to better our marriage.
Very, very good, very good. So please don't forget, what can you do to meet each other's needs, so you can have a great marriage, being God's indestructible plan for your marriage, and experience real sexual intimacy and fulfillment. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this time with Matters of the Heart podcast. If you have any comments, please let us know, okay? Put them in there. Hit the like button. We love you very much. Bye-bye.